Tim Freedman will be familiar to many of you as the creator of iconic songs by the Whitlams, such as No Aphrodisiac and You Gotta Love This City. Tim is now about to embark on a tour with a different version of the Whitlams, the Black Stump Band, and that is what we're discussing today. Hello, Tim.
Hi, Sophie.
It's lovely to talk to you. And as the central figure of the Whitlams, you held Australian music charts captive for a good few years. And I'm wondering if you're at all feeling that country music artists are nervous now that you've turned in that direction.
I don't think so. There's a lot of different artists, a lot of different styles, and also I've noticed there's a lot of different charts in country music. It seems like every person with a little website or a podcast seems to make their own chart. Yeah. There's plenty of room for everyone. We don't expect to take over, and we just enjoy putting our narratives across and just seeing whether people will enjoy our take on it.
Yeah, and I think yes, as you said, there is room for a lot of different types of styles and narratives within country music. And the formal name of your band is the Whitlams Black Stump Band, and it is named after Black Stump Way between Gunnedah and Mudgee, I believe. What happened on Black Stump Way to deserve a band name?
Well, I'll have to correct the record. I think that's just the publicist said I had a Damascus road, a conversion on the Black Stump Way, but it's not actually a road. I just like the phrase Black Stump. It's a very Australian phrase that sort of means it means to me a little bit not educated formally, maybe from out the sticks, a little bit agricultural. You know, I always like the term the Black Stump philosopher, who was the bloke who'd never been to study philosophy, but he'd sit at the end of the bar and tell you what he thought about the world. Yeah. And I always used to call myself a Black Stump musician because I wasn't really formally trained. And so when I had to name the country version of the Whitlams, Black Stump was a phrase that I always loved. So that's where Black Stump came from. It's actually a very Australian phrase too. It originated in a court case in the early 19th century when it was a New South Wales court case, I think, actually in the city, and there was an argument about perimeters, and someone basically said, my house goes to where that black stump is, and it became a phrase from there.
There you go. I actually did not know that, but I do remember the Black Stump restaurants.
Yes, they were a steak restaurant in Sydney in the 80s, and they'd put a little flag in your steak so that you didn't eat the medium rare one when you wanted the medium well one. I do remember frequenting an establishment once.
So sorry, I'm envisaging all these steaks coming out with little flags on because I'm not a steak eater, so therefore this was not an experience I had. But clearly you had the Black Stump restaurant experience.
Yeah, I was reminded of it by someone that I went to school with. When they saw what I'd named the band, they said, "Oh, you remember the flags, do you?" Yeah. I said, "No, I don't remember the flags. It's the recovered memory we're dealing with here." Yeah,
right. Now, you just mentioned you're not formally trained as a musician, but gee, you've done well for someone who's not formally trained.
Oh, if you hire good people in your band, you pick up all sorts of things.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that band, you have Matt Fell in that band, and he is a producer as well as a musician and a very in-demand musician. I'm wondering when you first worked with Matt, because I believe it was a while ago.
Yes, I sort of worked with Matt before he became known as a country music producer. I did a solo record for Sony Music in 2010, and I wanted to work with someone who played a lot of instruments because I wanted to keep it simple. And Matt's a bit of a one-man band. He's an engineer, producer. You know, he'll play the bass and the keys and the guitars, and everything happens really quickly, and I wasn't in the mood for a long process. He's very efficient, and he's a wonderful engineer, so things sound really good very quickly, and you can move quite instinctively in the studio, and you finish a day and you're surprised how much you've got done, because he just gets things right first and second take and makes decisions quickly. And so we got to know each other really well in 2010 on that album. It was a pop album, but I did notice when I listened to it again like a year ago that he managed to put in some banjos and pedal steel. So he did have those palettes in his repertoire. And then he kept saying, I'd see him around. I said, look, I just haven't been writing, but when I do, I'll give you a call. And so that's exactly what I did. I just watched from afar as he collected Golden Globe, Golden Guitar after Golden Guitar. And so when I had the idea between Mudgee and Gunnedah and Dubbo on this fictitious Black Stump way, I called him and said, how about we just have an experiment in the studio, put a band together. So he chose the band, all the people he'd got in for sessions over the previous 6 years, and these were his favourite 4 guys. And so we turned up to this big studio, everyone set up in their own little room, and we just threw them songs, and we just enjoyed seeing what came back.
Was that an unusual sensation for you, though, to have someone else choose the band, given how much experience you have and how much you've created your own music in the past?
Surrender's quite liberating sometimes. In the other side of things, the Whitlams, I've always been in control, and I've had the same band for 20 years. But I didn't know the best country players, so I just trusted Matt. And it was quite. It was exciting for me. I was a little apprehensive, but the good thing was I was singing really well at the time because I'd been doing so many solo shows, so I could sort of hold up my end. And those guys, hadn't necessarily worked with each other a lot either, but they knew of each other, so they were all in their top game because they were, they were with their peer group, and someone would go in and do their papoose or banjo part or pedal steel, and the other guys were all watching, so it was almost like a live performance. There was plenty of adrenaline, and we moved really quickly.
And I suppose it's also freeing for you as a singer and as a musician to be able to just do that. You don't have to be the band leader. You don't have to think of all those other details. And I wonder, like, if you felt that when you're performing live as much as you might have felt it recording as well.
Yes, and that dynamic was actually increased by the fact that we hired a piano player, an organ player for the sessions.
Right.
Because I wanted to just sing. And so, for example, the song "The Day John Sattler Broke His Jaw," that's all from the day. It's all just vocals that we recorded live, and they're often the best takes. You look back on them most fondly because they have a naturalness to them and a spontaneity that can't be replicated when you labour over something.
Yeah, right. Now, you mentioned that song, "The Day John Sattler Broke His Jaw," and that was the first song officially released by the Whitlams, the Black Stump Band, although I note that 50 Again was released as Black Stump Sessions. And it's a Perry Keys song, and Perry is a Sydney singer-songwriter. And that song, your version of it, has been getting some airplay to the extent that I heard Rampaging Roy Slavin and H.G. Nelson pondering at length which year it was in which John Sattler broke his jaw. I'm wondering why you decided to cover that song in particular.
Well, Perry's one of my favourite songwriters, and that's my favourite song of his. Matt and I chose 13 songs to experiment with, and half of them are my songs and half of them were covers. I sent 4 of them to my publicist, Jules, because she's worked in country music for a long time, and I said, which one of these do you think, would sort of work at radio? And she chose John Sattler, even though she knew nothing about rugby league. So I just went with Jules's choice. I was very pleased to put it out because I think it works in winter when there is actually a bit of rugby league on the airwaves. And also I did love the way the version developed. It's different enough from Perry's to have its own life, but I also like the way it builds. It starts off with cross stick and quite relaxed country, and then and by the end of it, it's sort of become quite energetic and almost like a country rock song. But all the gradations have happened imperceptibly. It's very it builds organically. So I'm really enjoying the fact that it's on the radio. Perry's a really good friend of mine, and it's great to get some airplay with one of his songs, and hopefully people go back and listen to his 6 albums that are full of classics, in my opinion. He writes, he's the best writer. He tells stories about the inner city, working class suburbs of Sydney. It's a real disappearing world because it's all getting so quickly gentrified. But he's an important songwriter, and good to shine some light on his repertoire.
And choosing that song as the single also gave you the opportunity for a family connection in the music video, because I believe your father makes a cameo appearance of sorts in that video.
Yes, the video. We found my father reading the Channel 7 News, doing the sports report, and actually all the South fans had posted it on one of their fan forums because there was some footage of a famous South-West match 2 weeks before the semi-finals in 1970. Anyway, and he tips South. He says, South will be hard to beat this year. And we couldn't believe our luck finding my father actually tipping South in this impending grand final, which became legendary. So we top and tailed the film clip with my dad at the age of 33 doing his gig in 1970.
I'm impressed you could even actually find the footage. I mean, I don't know if you would have had it to hand, but going into a film and sound archive, if that's what you did, must have been quite a bit of work.
Oh no, I didn't know any footage existed of Dad reading the news, so I was glad to find it. Perry actually found it.
Oh, wow.
Because he's the song's about South Sydney rabbits, or it's more about the suburbs and the people that are touched by the game rather than the game itself. But he is a South Sydney fan, and so he noticed that some South Sydney fans had posted this episode of the news on their forum because it had this 12 seconds of footage, South playing West. So he sent it over, and we couldn't believe it. It was actually in high res, and we could use it. We'd already started trying to compile a clip, so it was a little gift from heaven.
Yeah, how lovely. And you spoke about Perry as a songwriter and the subjects of his songs, but in listening to your songs, more with the Whitlams, because the songs you've created for the Black Stump Band haven't yet been released, but I find that as a songwriter, you have a lot of evocative details within your songs that in turn suggest other stories. So it's almost like we're just getting a glimpse of a tapestry, if that makes sense. And I'm wondering, when you start writing a song, do you have those sorts of details in mind, or do you edit a lot trying to find the right way to tell a story in a song?
I'm not sure, Sophie, if I can generalise about it, but you're right in the fact that I like to put in detail because it alludes to, depth and a lived life before the song, and makes the protagonist come alive, trying to hopefully mimic our memories and thought processes as we wander through the day. But I'd need to react to a specific example,
right,
to get any more specific. You know what I mean?
Well, yes, and I won't go through all the Whitlam songs because we are talking about the Black Stump Band, but I do understand what you mean.
The Black Stump Band is done the next single is going to be a version of Blow Up the Pokies, which is probably an example of that. It's just about a fellow playing the pokies where he used to play his instrument in a pub in Sydney in 1999, and we were. Yeah, people can get a sneak preview of it if they look for Wesley Mission on YouTube, because we were commissioned to do it for an anti-gambling campaign, the Wesley sort of gambling helpline. And so you can hear Blow Up the Pokies done in a different time signature with pedal steel on that Wesley Mission ad, and I'm going to finish the track off with Rod McCormack in a few weeks, and then send it down to Matt in Tasmania to mix it. And I'm looking forward to finishing that off, because I think it's a catchy song. People already know the chorus, but we've done it completely differently to the Whitlams, and hoping it gets a second life, because it's an important message for the community.
In going back to re-record these songs that you wrote quite a while ago and recorded with the Whitlams, do you find yourself as a songwriter thinking, wish I'd done something different and now's the chance to change it, or do you just accept that that's the version of the song that exists and you work with that?
Oh, no, I'm a bit of a reviser. Right. I like to. Our live versions are often phrased differently than the originals, because often when you're recording songs, you've only recently written them. They're fresh, they're new. You haven't sung them 400 times around the country, and so they get smoother and better as it goes on, which is why I'm going to start releasing some live versions of the Whitlams catalogue that we've been taping at shows, because they're a bit more conversational. I think the rhythms are a bit more natural because the songs had time to live and breathe for a while. So when I go to Pokies and when I go to a song like There's No One or No Aphrodisiac, I certainly sing it very differently to how I did on the originals, and I enjoy that change, that difference, that chance to evolve.
I mean, these are songs that are really cherished by a lot of people. And so I wonder also if there's, the chance that you might have listeners coming up to you reacting in a certain way, like how dare you meddle with that song that's so precious to me, or perhaps you've had that reaction when you perform these songs live.
No, people, I think people like to hear something familiar in a new context. Mm-hmm. They enjoy that. I think it's a little bit challenging for them, and there is prick up, and but they still know the words and the melodies, so it tends to be quite an enjoyable experience for them. They're not too precious about. It's only me that can be precious about the old versions, not them, and I'm not, so we're fine.
Well, that's true. I think you absolutely have the right to be precious about your own work. And speaking about live performance, it was live performances, I understand, that actually led to the creation of the Whitlams, the Black Stump Band, because you were doing some solo shows in rural and regional areas and enjoyed those country audiences so much that you thought about taking a different outfit on the road with you.
It was exactly this time last year. And looking back, I think I was a bit manic.
Right.
It was, well, I'm not actually manic, but my version of manic. Mm-hmm. I had a certain uncharacteristic enthusiasm for all things in life, let's put it that way. Right. And because if you cast your mind back, no one was working, no one was touring. Mm. Everyone was in their shells, everyone was depressed, everyone was moaning. And I thought, well, I just bring up my agent and go, right, there's no restrictions at the moment. Book me a tour, book me a gig in Orange and Gunnedah and Armidale and Tamworth and Dubbo in 5 weeks, and I'll go and play them solo. Because I can play solo, it was just me. I could just put my piano in the back of the car and I could advertise it on Facebook, and I'd turn up and there'd be 300 people in the theatre in Orange. No one had toured there for 12 months. Mm. It was like this post-apocalyptic landscape where no other musicians were working. And it was the absolute opposite of today, where everyone is trying to work at the same time and announcing tours and consumers of sport for choice. A year ago, I'd roll into town and I'd be the first touring musician they'd seen in 9 months. I'd wipe the dust off the piano in Alice Springs and in Launceston. And so I worked really hard. I drove a lot. I did my own merch. I did long sound checks. I did 1 or 2 shows. I did 3 shows in a night in Canberra.
Wow.
And I just got my enthusiasm back, and I found it quite ennobling. And I felt like I was, really had a social worth as well, because mm-hmm. people were coming out and remembering the joys of communal arts watching and listening. And the country audiences were especially welcoming. I remember a Sunday afternoon in Mudgee at the Low Winery, mm-hmm. and I remember quite a good-natured crowd at the Civic Theatre in Orange. And I just thought, when the lockdowns all stop, I want to keep doing this. I thought, so that's when I rang Matt from the pub in Mudgee, when I was just I was having a schooner after the Sunday afternoon show with a coal miner and his blind wife.
Right.
And I thought, this is country touring. and so I locked it in. And, just 12 months later, I've got the live band enjoyed themselves so much. The studio band enjoyed themselves so much they agreed to come on the road occasionally. And so we're just going for it, just one step ahead of the other.
But it's like, in doing those shows last year, you were essentially conducting an anthropological experiment that no musician ever really wanted to have to do, which was to have this long period without playing and then to go out and connect with audiences again. But yes, as you said, the way audiences responded, that craving for not just entertainment but connection, I guess, connection with live storytelling, is, I think, partly really moving, actually, about what has come out of this time. There's been so much that's been difficult for performing artists, but I saw at the Tamworth Country Music Festival this year the absolute joy people had in just being there again, artists and audience. And so I think for you to experience that, as you said, like you were the only one who'd done it for quite a long time, it must have been really special.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I felt. I mean, I got to Hobart, and I remember, the gig had the people were coming in and setting up the gig for the first time in 9 months and stuff like that. Launceston, the piano hadn't been used for 12 months. Yeah. It sounded terrible. So I had to use an electric one. But no, it was strange times. But I really managed to use it to my advantage, just because I was lucky enough to be able to be nimble enough to just play solo, and 4 weeks later I'm there.
Well, nimble and open-minded, I guess, to what the possibilities could be, because then, as you said, you called Matt and suddenly within a year you've got this completely new project and new tour dates. So I think that's moving as well, in a way, for an established artist to really keep their mind open about what's possible with their art.
Just before COVID hit, I had new enthusiasm. I was recording new songs. I wanted to start working more. I'd been raising a daughter. She's in year 12 now, so I can just get out and work more. And I'd come to the conscious decision that I wanted to become a full-time musician again, as opposed to a weekend warrior. Mm-hmm. And so I just took that energy into the lockdown and just tried to make it work for me.
Well, I've been keeping you talking for a while, and I have one more question, and it is about the piano, because as you said, you put your piano in the boot of your car, and some venues did have a piano. But I'm wondering, has there ever been a time where you thought, you know what, I should have learnt violin instead?
Oh, no. No. I've played with a lot of violinists. They're very talented, but they can't really, they sort of rely on each other to play. I like playing an instrument where I can sing with myself, and where I can play to people without having to rely on others. So no, I've never really got good at any other instruments. I'm still learning the piano. It's a lifetime journey for me, the piano. I've got a lot of things still to learn.
Well, as someone, I play piano too, and I thoroughly endorse anyone who loves piano. So, Tim, you don't need me to endorse you, but I appreciate you playing piano, and thank you very much for talking to me today.
My pleasure, Sophie.
Okay, bye.